What if I told you the greatest betrayal in your life may not come from another person, but from your own mind? Because every single day, your mind quietly works against your peace in ways you barely notice. It creates fear before anything bad even happens. It reopens painful memories long after the moment has already passed. It turns small problems into emotional storms inside your head. And slowly, without realizing it, you become exhausted fighting battles that only exist inside your mind. Pause. The strange part is, most people never question the voice inside them. They trust every fearful thought, every anxious prediction, every painful story the mind keeps repeating. So the mind keeps pulling them deeper into overthinking, deeper into emotional suffering, deeper into inner chaos. And after years of this, they no longer remember what real peace even feels like. But Buddhism teaches something deeply life-changing. You are not suffering because life is attacking you every moment. You are suffering because the mind keeps creating pain out of fear, memory, and imagination. And the greatest trap of all is that the mind convinces you its voice is who you are. Pause. But what if the voice inside your head is not the real you? What if, beneath all the overthinking, all the fear, all the emotional noise, there is a quieter part of you that has always been peaceful? Tonight, you are about to see the hidden ways your mind secretly controls your emotions, steals your peace, and shapes your entire reality. More importantly, you may finally discover how to free yourself from the voice that has been controlling your life for years. Your mind creates suffering before reality even has the chance to arrive. One of the strangest things about the human mind is that it can make the body suffer over events that have not even happened yet. Think about that carefully. A future conversation that does not exist yet can still ruin your entire day. A possible rejection can still make your chest feel heavy. An imagined disaster can still steal your sleep at night. The mind has an incredible ability to turn imagination into emotional reality. This is why so many people live in constant tension, not because life is always hurting them, but because their mind keeps predicting pain before reality even arrives. The mind says, what if everything goes wrong? What if they leave? What if you fail? What if something bad happens tomorrow? And slowly, your body begins reacting to situations that only exist inside your thoughts. Your breathing changes, your stomach tightens, your nervous system becomes exhausted, all because the mind created fear out of uncertainty. Pause. Most people do not realize how much of their suffering comes from mentally living inside the future. They abandon the present moment constantly, instead of experiencing life as it is. They experience life through fear-filled predictions created by the mind. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the mind becomes dangerous when it constantly escapes reality, because reality is usually happening now, but the fearful mind rarely stays in the present. It keeps searching for future danger to protect itself, and eventually, this endless searching becomes emotional suffering. You start losing peaceful moments that were never actually dangerous. You stop enjoying simple experiences because your mind is always somewhere else. The betrayal is not only that the mind creates fear, the betrayal is that it convinces you the fear is helping you. But most fear does not prepare you for life. It only steals the life you are already living. Most people wake up in the morning, and before the day even begins, their mind has already created 10 invisible problems. They check their phone and instantly begin worrying. One delayed reply suddenly feels personal. One small change in someone's behavior becomes a story inside the mind. And before anything truly happens, the heart already feels tired. This is how quietly the mind drains human peace, not through reality itself, but through interpretation. The mind keeps whispering, prepare for disappointment, prepare for pain, prepare for loss. And, after years of listening to these thoughts, people stop realizing how exhausted they have become. Pause. Some people are physically safe, but mentally terrified. Some people are surrounded by love, but mentally preparing for abandonment. Some people finally achieve the things they once prayed for, yet their mind still cannot relax, because the mind always believes another problem is coming. This is why peace feels difficult for so many people. Not because peace is impossible, but because the mind became addicted to scanning life for danger. The human mind thinks constant worrying will protect you from future pain. But in reality, constant worrying only forces you to suffer before suffering even arrives. And many times, the thing you feared never happens at all, yet the emotional damage still happened inside you. The sleepless nights happened, the anxiety happened, the emotional exhaustion happened, all because the mind confused imagination with reality. Buddhism teaches something deeply freeing here. The future exists mostly as thought, and thought is often shaped by fear. This means many of the disasters your mind creates are not reality. They are mental projections created by uncertainty. Pause. Look at how often the mind steals ordinary moments from people. A beautiful sunset becomes invisible because the mind is busy worrying. A peaceful dinner becomes stressful because the mind keeps replaying tomorrow. Time with family becomes emotionally distant because attention is trapped inside overthinking. Life keeps happening, but the mind is somewhere else completely. And, slowly, people stop truly experiencing their own lives. This is one of the saddest betrayals of the human mind. It steals the present moment while promising to protect the future. But the future never truly arrives the way the mind imagines it. Reality is usually softer than fear predicts. Yet fear always speaks with confidence. That is why people trust it. Pause. The mind says, if you worry enough, you will stay safe. But safety does not come from endless fear. Real peace comes from awareness, from learning how to return to this moment again and again, from noticing when the mind begins creating suffering out of uncertainty, from understanding that not every fearful thought deserves your belief. A calm mind does not mean life becomes perfect. It means you stop allowing imaginary futures to destroy real moments. And this changes everything, because once you begin seeing how the mind creates unnecessary suffering, you slowly stop obeying every fearful story it creates. You breathe differently. You think differently. You experience life differently. For the first time, you begin living in reality instead of mentally rehearsing pain all day. And perhaps that is where freedom quietly begins. Your mind reopens old wounds until pain starts feeling like your identity. The human mind has a strange habit. It does not simply remember pain, it relives it. A painful moment may happen only once in reality, but inside the mind, it can happen 1,000 more times. One heartbreak, one betrayal, one humiliation, one moment of rejection. Life moves forward, but the mind quietly keeps returning to the wound. Again and again and again. You may be sitting peacefully in your room, yet suddenly an old memory appears out of nowhere. A sentence someone once said, a face you tried to forget, a moment you wish never happened, and within seconds, your emotions begin changing all over again. Your chest feels heavy, your energy drops, your peace disappears, even though the moment itself is already gone. Pause. This is one of the deepest ways the mind betrays people. It keeps old suffering emotionally alive long after life has already moved on. Many people believe they are suffering because of what happened to them, but often they are suffering because their mind keeps reopening the emotional wound every single day. The mind becomes attached to painful stories. It repeats them so often that eventually they stop feeling like memories. They begin feeling like identity. Someone left you once, and now your mind whispers. Everyone leaves. Someone betrayed your trust, and now your mind says, You cannot fully trust anyone. Someone made you feel unwanted. And now, the mind quietly repeats, "You are not enough." Notice what happened. One painful experience slowly became a permanent belief about yourself and life. This is how emotional suffering becomes deeply rooted inside people, not only through pain itself, but through constant mental repetition. Pause. The mind is like a storyteller that never becomes tired. And unfortunately, fearful stories leave the deepest emotional marks. The mind keeps replaying scenes from the past because it believes remembering pain will somehow protect you from future suffering. But instead, it traps you inside emotional prisons created years ago. Many people are no longer living in the present moment emotionally. Part of them is still living inside an old heartbreak, an old embarrassment, an old loss, an old version of themselves. Their body moved forward, but their mind never truly left the pain behind. This is why some people still feel emotionally wounded years after the event ended. Not because time failed to move, but because the mind kept feeding the wound with attention. Every replay strengthens the emotion again. Every replay reminds the nervous system of the pain again. Every replay makes the memory feel more alive. And after enough repetition, the suffering starts feeling permanent. Pause. The dangerous part is, people become so familiar with emotional pain that they stop questioning it. Sadness becomes normal. Overthinking becomes normal. Emotional heaviness becomes normal. Some people have carried inner pain for so long, they no longer remember what peace even feels like. The mind convinces them, this is simply who you are. But Buddhism teaches something deeply important. Pain is a human experience. It is not your identity. What happened to you matters. Your wounds matter. Your heartbreak matters. But you are more than the pain your mind keeps replaying. The problem is not that painful memories exist. The problem is that unconscious attachment keeps feeding them constantly. Pause. Think about how often the mind revisits moments that no longer exist. A conversation from 5 years ago, a mistake from childhood, a person who already left your life. The memory keeps returning, and each time it returns, your peace quietly leaves with it. This is why awareness matters so deeply, because awareness interrupts unconscious emotional repetition. You begin noticing when the mind starts reopening old wounds again. You begin seeing the patterns clearly. You realize, this memory is appearing again. This fear is repeating itself again. This emotional story is controlling me again. And in that moment, something powerful begins happening. A small space appears between you and the memory. For the first time, you stop drowning inside it automatically. Buddhist wisdom does not teach people to hate their past. It teaches people to stop living inside it unconsciously. Because healing begins the moment you stop turning old pain into your permanent identity. You are not only the worst thing that happened to you. You are not only your heartbreak, your failures, your regrets, your wounds. You are also the awareness capable of seeing all of it clearly. And awareness is where healing quietly begins. Pause. The mind may continue bringing old memories back sometimes. That is natural. But now, you no longer have to sit inside every painful story for hours. You no longer have to believe every emotional wound defines your future. You can observe the memory, feel the emotion, breathe through it, and gently let it pass without reopening the suffering again and again. This is how inner freedom slowly begins. Not by erasing the past, but by finally ending the unconscious habit of reliving it every day. Your mind becomes loudest the moment life finally turns quiet. Have you ever noticed your thoughts become louder at night? During the day, life keeps you distracted. There are notifications, conversation, responsibilities, noise, movement. Your attention stays busy almost every second. But then night arrives. The world slowly becomes quiet. The lights dim. The conversations end. the distractions disappear, and, suddenly, the mind begins speaking more loudly than ever before. Old memories return, regrets return, fear returns, loneliness returns. Thoughts you ignored all day suddenly stand in front of you demanding attention, and many people realize something deeply uncomfortable in those quiet moments. They are not at peace inside themselves. Pause. This is why silence feels heavy for so many people. Not because silence itself is painful, but because silence reveals what distraction was hiding. Most people believe they are afraid of being alone, but often they are afraid of hearing their own mind clearly. The moment life slows down, the inner chaos finally becomes visible. The mind starts replaying unfinished emotional pain. It reminds you of the person you miss, the mistake you regret, the future you fear, the version of yourself you secretly feel disappointed in, and within minutes, your peaceful night quietly becomes emotional suffering. This is one of the hidden betrayals of the human mind. It waits for silence, and then fills it with noise. Pause. Notice how difficult it has become for many people to simply sit quietly. The moment silence appears, they immediately reach for distraction: a phone, music, social media, television, constant stimulation. Not always because they enjoy these things deeply, but because distraction protects them from facing themselves. The mind has become so restless that stillness now feels uncomfortable, and this restlessness slowly exhausts the human spirit. Buddhist wisdom teaches something deeply powerful here. Silence is not your enemy. Silence is a mirror. It reveals the true condition of your inner world. A peaceful mind becomes softer in silence. An anxious mind becomes trapped inside overthinking. An unhealed mind becomes overwhelmed by memories and emotional noise. This is why some people cannot sleep peacefully, even when life around them is calm. Externally, everything may look fine, but internally, their mind never stops moving. Pause. The mind constantly searches for something to hold on to: a problem, a fear, a regret, a future scenario. Because a restless mind feels uncomfortable with emptiness. It feels uncomfortable with stillness. Stillness forces the mind to face itself, and many people spend years avoiding this without realizing it. Some people stay constantly busy, not because they love productivity, but because silence makes them emotionally uncomfortable. If they stop moving, they start feeling everything they buried: the sadness, the fear, the loneliness, the exhaustion. So they keep distracting themselves. But no distraction can permanently silence an unhealed mind. Eventually, the noise always returns, especially in quiet moments, especially late at night, especially when life finally slows down. Pause. This is why the nighttime mind can feel so overwhelming. You are no longer distracted from yourself. The emotional weight you ignored during the day quietly rises to the surface, and suddenly, small thoughts become large emotional storms. One memory turns into overthinking. One fear turns into anxiety. One feeling of loneliness becomes emotional heaviness for hours. The mind grows powerful in unconscious silence because most people do not know how to observe their thoughts calmly. They immediately become emotionally absorbed by them. But Buddhism teaches a completely different relationship with silence. Instead of running from quiet moments, you slowly learn how to sit inside them with awareness. You begin noticing the mind instead of instantly obeying it. You notice the anxious thoughts appearing. You notice the emotional stories forming. You notice the fears trying to pull your attention away from the present moment. And little by little, you stop becoming controlled by every thought that enters your mind. This changes everything, because silence is no longer a prison. It becomes a doorway into deeper awareness. Pause. Many people spend their whole lives trying to escape silence, without realizing silence is where healing begins. When the world becomes quiet, you finally have the chance to see yourself clearly. Not the version of yourself created by distraction, not the version constantly reacting to noise, but the deeper inner world beneath all of it. And yes, at first, this can feel uncomfortable, because awareness exposes emotional wounds you avoided for years. But slowly, something beautiful begins happening. The more you stop running from silence, the less power your mind has over you. You begin noticing thoughts without drowning inside them. You begin feeling emotions without panicking. You begin realizing that inner peace was never found through endless distraction. It was found through awareness, through stillness, through learning how to remain present even when the mind becomes noisy. Pause. The truth is, your mind does not become loud in silence because silence is dangerous. It becomes loud because silence removes the distractions, hiding the noise that was already there. And once you understand this, your relationship with quiet moments begins changing completely. You stop fearing silence. You stop treating stillness like an enemy. You begin welcoming those quiet moments as opportunities to understand yourself more deeply. Because hidden beneath all the mental noise, beneath all the overthinking, beneath all the emotional chaos, there is still a calm awareness inside you that has never disappeared. And the quieter the world becomes, the more clearly you can finally hear it. Your mind tricks you into believing every thought defines who you are. One of the greatest illusions created by the human mind is the belief that every thought inside your head is telling you the truth about who you are. A fearful thought appears, and immediately you believe, "I am weak." An anxious thought appears, and suddenly you feel unsafe. One insecure thought enters your mind, and your entire mood changes. A painful memory returns, and instantly you begin feeling broken all over again. Most people never stop to question what is happening. They simply believe every thought automatically, and because of this, their entire emotional life becomes controlled by temporary mental noise. Pause. Think about how many thoughts pass through your mind every single day. Thousands. Some are kind. Some are fearful. Some are wise. Some are irrational. Some are created from stress. Some are created from loneliness. Some are created from exhaustion. Yet people treat all thoughts as equally important. This is one of the deepest betrayals of the mind. It speaks constantly, and then convinces you every sentence deserves your trust. The mind says, "You are failing in life. You are not enough. People secretly dislike you. You will never truly heal. You will never find peace." And because the voice sounds personal, you believe it, not realizing the mind often speaks from emotional conditioning rather than truth. Pause. Buddhist wisdom teaches something life-changing. A thought is only a mental event. It is not automatically reality, and it is definitely not your identity. This changes everything once you truly understand it, because most suffering comes from unconscious identification with thought. People do not simply experience thoughts, they become them. One negative thought appears, and their entire identity collapses into it. One emotional fear appears, and suddenly they believe the future is doomed. The mind creates one dark sentence, and people carry it emotionally for hours, sometimes for years. This is how inner suffering quietly grows, not only through pain itself, but through believing every thought deserves absolute authority over your emotions. Pause. Imagine sitting beside a cloudy sky. Thoughts are like clouds constantly passing overhead. Some are dark, some are light, some disappear quickly, some stay longer. But the sky itself remains untouched beneath all of them. Awareness is like that sky, calm, silent, present beneath every mental storm. But most people never notice the awareness. They only notice the clouds. So every fearful thought feels permanent. Every emotional reaction feels like identity. Every passing insecurity feels like truth. And slowly, People lose connection with the deeper part of themselves beneath the noise. This is why overthinking becomes so emotionally dangerous. Because the mind keeps creating stories, and the person keeps emotionally entering every single one. Pause. Notice how quickly a single thought can change your emotional state. You could be having a peaceful day, and then suddenly your mind whispers, "What if they stop caring about you?" Within seconds, your energy changes, your peace disappears, your heart becomes heavy, your attention leaves the present moment. Nothing actually happened. Reality stayed the same. Only a thought appeared. Yet the body reacted as if the fear were real. This is how powerful unconscious thinking becomes. The mind creates emotional storms from invisible sentences, and most people never realize they are living under the control of thoughts they never questioned. Buddhist wisdom teaches that awareness creates freedom because awareness allows you to observe thoughts without instantly becoming trapped inside them. This does not mean thoughts disappear completely. The mind will always create thoughts. That is what minds do. But now, something changes. You begin noticing thoughts instead of obeying them automatically. You begin seeing fear arise without instantly believing it. You begin observing anger without letting it completely control your behavior. You begin watching insecurity appear without allowing it to define your worth. And slowly, space begins appearing inside your inner world. Pause. That space is powerful, because inside that space, you finally realize something deeply freeing. You are not every thought that enters your mind. You are the awareness observing those thoughts. You are the silent presence hearing the inner voice. And once you recognize this, the mind starts losing its ability to completely control your emotions. A fearful thought still appears, but now you see it differently. Instead of immediately panicking, you quietly notice the mind is creating fear again. An insecure thought appears, but instead of drowning inside it, you observe it calmly. This small shift changes the entire relationship between you and your mind, because now thoughts become experiences you observe. Instead of identities, you become. Pause. Most people spend their entire lives trapped inside mental stories they never consciously chose. Stories created by childhood pain, stories created by rejection, stories created by fear, stories repeated so many times they started feeling real. But awareness interrupts the story. It allows you to finally ask, is this thought actually true? Or is this simply an old emotional pattern speaking again? And many times, you begin realizing the mind has been lying to you for years. Not intentionally, but through fear, through conditioning, through emotional survival. The mind tries to protect you by predicting danger constantly, but often it only creates suffering. This is why inner peace cannot exist without awareness, because without awareness, every thought becomes emotionally powerful, and a mind without awareness becomes a prison people carry everywhere they go. Pause. The beautiful thing is, freedom does not begin when the mind becomes completely silent. Freedom begins the moment you stop believing every thought deserves your trust. That is the beginning of awakening, the beginning of emotional freedom, the beginning of finally living with your mind instead of being controlled by it. And perhaps for the first time in your life, you start realizing there is something inside you far deeper than fear, something quieter than thought, something calmer than emotion, a silent awareness that has been there the entire time, waiting for you to finally notice it. Your mind secretly becomes addicted to emotional chaos and inner conflict. One of the most painful truths about the human mind is that after living inside emotional chaos for too long, peace can start feeling unfamiliar. Many people believe they want calmness. They say they want peace, rest, stillness, freedom from overthinking. But when life finally becomes quiet, their mind secretly begins creating noise again, not because they are bad people, not because they enjoy suffering, but because the mind becomes emotionally attached to what feels familiar. And for many people, stress has become familiar, worry has become familiar, inner conflict has become familiar. Pause. Think about how often the mind creates problems out of ordinary situations. A short message suddenly feels personal. A small delay feels like rejection. One change in someone's energy becomes a huge emotional story inside the mind. And before reality even speaks clearly, the mind already creates emotional chaos. This is how deeply conditioned the mind becomes after years of unconscious fear. It no longer waits for danger. It searches for it constantly because the mind believes emotional tension keeps you prepared for pain. But slowly, this habit begins destroying inner peace. The mind becomes restless in calm situations. Silence feels uncomfortable. Healthy relationships feel suspicious. Stillness feels strange. Some people finally escape toxic environments, yet their mind still behaves like danger is everywhere. Their body leaves the chaos, but their mind keeps recreating it internally. Pause. This is why some people sabotage peaceful moments without realizing it. Life finally becomes stable, and suddenly they begin overthinking everything. They search for hidden problems. They create arguments in their imagination. They replay conversations repeatedly. They expect disappointment before anything bad even happens. The mind became so used to emotional storms that peace now feels emotionally unfamiliar, and the human mind often returns to familiar suffering faster than unfamiliar peace. This is one of the deepest betrayals of unconscious thinking. The mind says it wants peace, while secretly feeding the patterns destroying it. Buddhist wisdom teaches something very important here. Attachment is not only attachment to people. You can become attached to emotional suffering too. Attached to drama, attached to overthinking, attached to worry, attached to emotional intensity, because emotional chaos creates stimulation, and stimulation keeps the restless mind occupied. Pause. Notice how difficult it is for many people to simply sit peacefully without mentally creating problems. The moment life becomes calm, the mind immediately asks, what if something goes wrong? What if this peace does not last? What if I lose everything? The mind becomes uncomfortable with uncertainty, so instead of relaxing into the present moment, it creates fear to feel emotionally prepared. But this preparation never truly ends. One fear disappears, another arrives. One problem gets solved, the mind creates another. This is why many people remain emotionally exhausted, even during good seasons of life. The outer world improves, but the inner world remains trapped in survival mode. And after years of this pattern, people stop realizing how addicted they became to emotional struggle. Pause. Some people no longer know how to feel safe inside peace. They only feel emotionally alive when something dramatic is happening, when there is tension, conflict, fear, confusion. Calmness almost feels empty to them, so the mind unconsciously creates emotional movement again. This is why healing can feel strangely uncomfortable at first, because peace asks you to release emotional patterns you carried for years, and the mind fears letting go of familiar suffering. Even painful emotions can become part of identity. A person may say, I have always been anxious. I have always overthought everything. I have always struggled emotionally. Notice the language. The suffering slowly becomes fused with identity, and once that happens, the mind protects the suffering, because it feels connected to self. Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us, you are not the chaos inside your mind. You are the awareness capable of observing it. Pause. The moment awareness enters these patterns, everything begins changing slowly. You begin noticing how the mind creates unnecessary drama. You notice how quickly it turns uncertainty into fear. You notice how it searches for emotional problems even during peaceful moments. And for the first time, you stop automatically following every mental impulse. Instead of feeding the chaos, you observe it. Instead of immediately reacting, you breathe. Instead of creating another emotional storm, you remain present. This is where healing quietly begins. Not through force, not through fighting the mind aggressively, but through awareness strong enough to stop feeding unconscious emotional habits. The mind loses power when it no longer receives constant emotional reaction from you. Pause. Imagine a fire slowly fading because no one continues adding wood to it. This is what happens when awareness stops feeding mental chaos. The overthinking slowly weakens. The emotional intensity softens. The inner conflict loses energy, not overnight, but little by little, and eventually you begin experiencing something many people rarely feel deeply: inner calmness without needing chaos, peace without needing constant stimulation, silence without feeling emotionally trapped inside it. This is one of the most beautiful transformations Buddhist wisdom offers. The realization that peace is not boring. Peace is freedom. Freedom from endless mental noise. Freedom from emotional exhaustion. Freedom from a mind constantly searching for problems to survive. And perhaps for the first time in your life, you begin understanding that calmness was never emptiness. It was the feeling of finally no longer being at war with yourself. Your mind steals your peace by dragging you away from the present moment. One of the quietest ways the mind betrays people is by constantly pulling them away from the only moment where life is actually happening. The present moment. Most people are physically here, but mentally somewhere else. Their body sits in the room, while their mind wanders through fear, regret, worry, and endless imagination. They are eating, but thinking about tomorrow. They are spending time with people they love, but mentally replaying the past. They are walking outside under a beautiful sky, but trapped inside anxious thoughts they cannot stop feeding. And slowly, without realizing it, they stop fully experiencing their own lives. Pause. The mind has a strange obsession with leaving the present moment. It constantly travels backward into memory or forward into fear. Very rarely does it simply rest here, because the present moment feels too simple for an overactive mind. The mind wants movement, noise, stimulation, mental activity. So even during peaceful moments, it creates emotional tension to keep itself occupied. This is why many people feel emotionally exhausted all the time, not because every moment of life is painful, but because the mind never truly allows them to be present inside life itself. Buddhist wisdom teaches something deeply important. Most suffering exists in the mind's relationship with time. The mind drags you into the past and fills you with regret. Then it drags you into the future and fills you with anxiety. And while this is happening, the present moment quietly disappears. Pause. Think about how many beautiful moments your mind never fully allowed you to experience. A peaceful morning ruined by overthinking. A quiet evening destroyed by anxiety about tomorrow. Time with family interrupted by mental stress. A beautiful opportunity ignored because the mind was busy predicting failure. Life keeps offering small moments of peace, but the mind keeps pulling attention away from them. This is one of the saddest parts of unconscious living. People spend years waiting for peace, while mentally abandoning every peaceful moment they already have. The mind says, you can relax later. You can enjoy life after everything is solved. You can feel peace once the future becomes certain. But the future never becomes fully certain. There is always another problem, another fear, another what if, and because of this, many people postpone peace for their entire lives. Pause. The present moment is usually far gentler than the mind makes it seem. Right now, in this exact moment, you are simply breathing, you are listening, you are existing, you are here. But the mind keeps trying to convince you that something else matters more. Something in the future, something in the past, something imaginary. This constant mental movement slowly disconnects people from reality itself. They stop noticing simple beauty, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of rain, a calm breath, a peaceful silence, a meaningful conversation, the quiet comfort of being alive. The mind becomes so distracted chasing fear and control that ordinary peace becomes invisible. Pause. This is why awareness is so powerful in Buddhist wisdom. Awareness returns you to what is real, not the imagined future, not the painful memory, not the emotional story created by overthinking, just this moment. And in this moment, many of the mind's fears suddenly lose their power. because reality is often much calmer than imagination. The anxious mind lives in possibility. Awareness lives in reality. This changes everything. The mind says, "What if everything falls apart tomorrow?" Awareness quietly asks, Askaval asks, "But what is happening right now?" The mind says, "You are behind in life." Awareness notices, "In this moment, I am simply breathing." The mind creates pressure constantly. Awareness creates space. Pause. Many people believe peace is something they must achieve far away in the future. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that peace begins the moment you stop abandoning the present mentally, not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because awareness interrupts unnecessary suffering. When you return to the present moment, the mind slows down, the body relaxes, the breath softens, the nervous system finally rests for a moment, and slowly you begin realizing something beautiful. Life was never attacking you as much as the mind convinced you it was. Much of the suffering came from mentally leaving reality over and over again. This is why mindfulness feels so healing. It reconnects you with existence itself, not with imagination, not with fear, not with mental noise, just with life as it is. Pause. The present moment has a quiet kind of wisdom. It does not scream for attention like the mind does. It simply waits patiently for you to return. And every time you return, even for a few seconds, you reclaim a small piece of your peace. You notice the air moving through your lungs. You notice your surroundings again. You notice that not every second needs to become a mental battle. This is how awareness slowly heals the exhausted mind. Not through force, not through perfection, but through gentle returning, again and again and again, returning from fear into presence, returning from overthinking into awareness, returning from mental chaos into reality. Pause. The mind will continue trying to pull you away sometimes. That is its habit. It will revisit old memories. It will predict future problems. It will search for emotional danger. But now, you begin noticing the pattern, and instead of following every thought unconsciously, you return to this moment, to your breath, to your body, to what is actually real right now. And little by little, something inside you becomes calmer. The inner noise softens. The emotional pressure weakens. And for the first time in a very long time, you stop feeling lost inside your own mind, because you are finally here, not trapped in yesterday, not terrified of tomorrow, but alive inside this moment. And perhaps that is where true peace quietly begins. The more you fight your mind, the deeper you become trapped inside it. Most people spend their entire lives fighting their own mind, fighting fear, fighting anxiety, fighting painful thoughts, fighting emotions they do not want to feel. And at first, this seems understandable. When fear appears, you want to push it away. When sadness appears, you want it gone immediately. When overthinking begins, you desperately try to silence it. But something strange happens. The harder people fight their inner world, the more exhausted they become. Pause. The mind becomes stronger when every thought is treated like an enemy, because resistance gives emotional energy to the very thing you are trying to escape. Think about it carefully. The moment a fearful thought appears, most people panic. They immediately think, "Why am I thinking this? How do I stop this? What if something is wrong with me?" And suddenly, one small thought becomes a massive emotional struggle, not because the thought itself was powerful, but because fear and resistance kept feeding it. This is one of the deepest traps of the human mind. The mind creates fear, and then fear of the fear creates even more suffering. Pause. Imagine trying to calm water by punching it. The more force you use, the more movement you create. The human mind works the same way. Aggressive resistance creates inner turbulence. This is why some people become emotionally drained for years, not only because painful thoughts appear, but because they spend every day at war with themselves. Buddhist wisdom teaches something completely different. Instead of fighting every thought, observe it. Instead of panicking every time fear appears, notice it calmly. Instead of trying to force the mind into silence, allow thoughts to rise and pass naturally, without becoming trapped inside them. This changes your entire relationship with your inner world. Pause. Most thoughts lose power when they are no longer fed by emotional resistance, but people unknowingly keep feeding them. A fearful thought appears and they replay it repeatedly. An anxious emotion appears and they become terrified of feeling anxious. A painful memory appears and they desperately try to escape it. The mind becomes louder because it receives constant emotional reaction. This is why overthinking feels endless. The mind notices what emotionally affects you most and keeps returning to it. Not because it wants to destroy you, but because unconscious attention keeps strengthening those mental patterns. The more emotional energy you give a thought, the more important the mind believes it is, and eventually, your entire inner world becomes consumed by resistance. Pause. Some people wake up already fighting themselves. They criticize their emotions, judge their thoughts, attack themselves mentally for feeling weak, anxious, sad, or confused. Their inner voice becomes harsh and exhausting, and after years of this, they no longer feel safe inside their own mind. This is one reason people become emotionally tired even when nothing difficult is happening externally. Inner conflict drains the human spirit deeply. Buddhist wisdom teaches that peace does not come from violently controlling the mind. Peace comes from understanding it, from observing it without hatred, from realizing that thoughts are temporary experiences, not permanent enemies. Pause. Think about the sky during a storm. The sky does not fight the storm. It allows the storm to move through naturally, and eventually the storm passes. But imagine if the sky resisted every cloud aggressively. There would be endless turbulence. This is how most people treat their emotions. They resist every uncomfortable feeling immediately, but resistance often traps the emotion inside the body longer. Awareness softens the struggle. Awareness says, this fear is here right now. This sadness is here right now. This anxiety is here right now, without panic, without self-hatred, without emotional violence. And strangely, when the struggle stops, the mind slowly begins calming itself naturally. Pause. This does not mean you become passive or weak. It means you stop making every thought into a personal emergency. You stop reacting to every mental movement with fear. You stop treating yourself like an enemy that must constantly be controlled. And this creates something beautiful inside the mind. Space. Space between you and the thought. Space between you and the emotion. And inside that space, freedom quietly begins growing, because now you can experience fear without drowning inside it. You can experience sadness without believing it will last forever. You can experience difficult thoughts without allowing them to completely define your reality. This is emotional maturity in Buddhist wisdom. Not becoming emotionless, but learning how to remain aware even during emotional storms. Pause. Many people believe peace means having no negative thoughts, but that is not realistic. The human mind will always create thoughts, some beautiful, some fearful, some confusing. Peace is not the absence of mental activity. Peace is the absence of unconscious attachment to mental activity. That changes everything. Now the mind can speak without completely controlling you. Fear can appear without owning your entire day. Anxiety can rise without convincing you that you are broken, because awareness is finally stronger than reaction. Pause. This is why compassion matters so deeply in Buddhist wisdom. A harsh mind creates more suffering. A gentle awareness creates healing. The more kindly you observe yourself, the safer your inner world becomes, and slowly, the war inside your mind begins ending. No more endless fighting. No more exhausting resistance. No more drowning inside every passing thought. Just awareness, breathing, observing, allowing life to move naturally again. And perhaps for the first time in many years, you begin realizing something deeply freeing. You do not need to destroy your mind to find peace. You only need to stop fighting yourself long enough to finally understand it. True freedom begins the moment you realize you are not the voice in your head. There comes a moment in every person's life when they become tired of living inside endless mental noise, tired of overthinking, tired of fear, tired of emotional exhaustion. tired of fighting thoughts that never seem to stop. And for many people, the deepest suffering is not what happens outside of them. It is the voice inside their own mind, the voice that keeps judging them, questioning them, scaring them, reminding them of failure, predicting rejection, creating anxiety about the future. That voice speaks so often that eventually people begin believing it is who they truly are. Pause. This is the greatest illusion the mind creates. The belief that you are the voice in your head. The belief that every thought defines you. Every fear defines you. Every emotional storm defines you. But Buddhist wisdom teaches something deeply freeing. You are not the voice. You are the one hearing it. Think about that carefully. If you can notice the thought, then there must be something deeper inside you observing it, a quiet awareness that exists beneath the noise. That awareness has always been there, even during your hardest moments. It was there during your heartbreak, during your anxiety, during your loneliness, during your confusion. The thoughts changed constantly, but the awareness remained. Pause. Most people spend their entire lives trapped inside thought, without ever stepping back to observe it. So every fearful sentence feels personal. The mind says, "You are not enough," and immediately they believe it. The mind says, "You will never heal," and instantly hopelessness appears. The mind says, "Something bad is going to happen," and the body becomes filled with anxiety. Notice what happened. A thought appeared, and the person surrendered their peace to it completely. This is how unconscious thinking controls human life. Not because thoughts are always true, but because people rarely question them. The mind speaks and they obey. Again and again and again. Pause. But the moment awareness enters, something powerful begins changing. For the first time, you stop automatically becoming every thought you experience. You begin observing thoughts instead of drowning inside them. Fear appears, but now you notice it calmly. Sadness appears, but now you understand it is temporary. An insecure thought appears, but now you no longer treat it like absolute truth. This creates a completely different relationship with your inner world. Now, the mind is no longer your master. It simply becomes something you observe with awareness. And this changes everything emotionally, because most suffering comes from unconscious identification with thought. People think, "I am anxious," but awareness notices, "Anxiety is appearing inside me right now." People think, "I am broken," but awareness notices, "Pain is moving through me right now." This small shift may seem simple, but it changes the entire experience of being human. Pause. The voice in the mind is constantly changing. Some days it feels confident, some days fearful, some days angry, some days exhausted. If your identity changes with every passing thought, then peace becomes impossible. But awareness is different. Awareness quietly remains beneath all mental movement. Like the sky behind changing weather, storms come and go, clouds appear and disappear, but the sky itself remains untouched. Your awareness is like that. Thoughts move through it, emotions move through it, fear moves through it, but awareness itself stays present, calm, silent, watching. This is why Buddhist wisdom places so much importance on observing the mind, because the moment you truly see the mind clearly, you stop becoming trapped inside every thought it creates. Pause. Most people live as prisoners of mental noise, because they never learned how to separate themselves from thought. Their entire identity becomes built from temporary emotions and passing fears. And after years of this, they forget what inner stillness feels like. But awareness slowly brings you back to yourself, not the fearful version created by overthinking, not the exhausted version created by emotional survival, but the deeper presence beneath all of it, the part of you that can simply observe life without constantly turning every experience into suffering. This is true inner freedom, not controlling every thought, not becoming emotionally numb, but finally realizing you do not need to obey every voice inside your mind. Pause. The mind will continue speaking sometimes. Fear may still appear, pain may still visit you, Old memories may still return unexpectedly, but now something is different. You no longer disappear inside every thought automatically. You begin noticing the patterns. You begin seeing how fear tries to pull your attention away from the present moment. You begin understanding how temporary thoughts created permanent suffering for years, and little by little, the mind loses its control over your inner peace, because awareness is finally stronger than unconscious thinking. Pause. This is the beginning of awakening, not some distant mystical experience, but a quiet inner realization, the realization that thoughts are not always truth, the realization that awareness exists beneath fear, the realization that peace was never completely missing. It was simply buried beneath endless mental noise. And the more aware you become, the more clearly you start seeing life itself. You stop reacting to every emotional wave. You stop chasing every fearful story. You stop building your identity around pain. Instead, you begin living with more space inside yourself, more stillness, more clarity, more emotional freedom, and perhaps for the first time in your life, you finally feel what it means to exist without being completely controlled by the mind, not because the voice disappeared forever, but because you finally realized you were never the voice to begin with. Maybe for many years, you believed the voice inside your mind was telling you the truth. Maybe you believed every fearful thought, every anxious prediction, every painful memory the mind kept replaying again and again. And slowly, without noticing it, you became emotionally exhausted trying to survive inside your own head. You smiled outside, while silently struggling inside. You kept moving through life, but your mind never truly let you rest. Pause. But tonight, something began changing. Not because your problems suddenly disappeared, not because life instantly became perfect, but because for the first time, you started seeing the mind clearly. You started realizing that not every thought deserves your trust. You started realizing how much suffering was created by unconscious fear, constant overthinking, and emotional attachment to mental noise. Most importantly, you began remembering something deeply important. You are not broken. You are simply tired from carrying thoughts that were never meant to control your entire life. Pause. The mind may still speak tomorrow. Fear may still appear sometimes. Old memories may still visit you unexpectedly, but now you will hear them differently. Now you will notice the patterns. You will recognize when the mind tries pulling you away from peace. You will remember to return to this moment, to your breath, to awareness, again and again, and slowly, your inner world will begin becoming lighter, not through force, not through fighting yourself, but through understanding, because awareness heals what unconsciousness keeps repeating. Pause. There is a quiet peace inside you that has existed beneath the noise this entire time. A calm presence untouched by fear, untouched by overthinking, untouched by the endless storms of the mind. It has always been there, waiting patiently beneath all the mental chaos. And perhaps tonight, for the first time in a very long time, you finally felt it again. Just for a moment, a small inner stillness, a quiet breath, a feeling that maybe you no longer need to spend your entire life trapped inside thought. And that realization changes everything, because true freedom does not begin when the world becomes silent. True freedom begins the moment you stop letting the mind control who you are. Pause. So tonight, rest gently. You do not need to solve your entire life right now. You do not need to fight every thought. You do not need to carry tomorrow before it arrives. Just return to this moment. Return to your breath. Return to the quiet awareness beneath the noise. And little by little, peace will find you again. If this video spoke to something deep inside you, take a quiet moment tonight and ask yourself, how much of my suffering came from life itself, and how much came from the stories my mind kept repeating? And if even one part of this message helped you feel a little more aware, a little more present, or a little less alone inside your own mind, then stay connected with us here at Golden Lotus Wisdom. Because this journey is not about escaping life. It is about finally understanding the mind, finding peace within yourself, and learning how to live with more awareness, clarity, and inner freedom. Until next time, slow down, breathe gently, and remember, you are not the storm inside your mind. You are the quiet awareness watching it pass.